In 1985, Taimak looked like the future of martial arts movies. His first movie was a hit. Audiences loved him, critics loved him, and Hollywood thought it had found its next action star. But then something strange happened. He disappeared. No massive franchise, no string of blockbuster sequels, no Hollywood takeover. Instead, one of the most talented martial artists of his generation became one of the most forgotten stars in action movie history. And the craziest part? Before he ever made a movie, he beat out future Hollywood legends for the role that changed his life. Denzel Washington, Wesley Snipes, Laurence Fishburne, all three auditioned. None of them got the part. A 19-year-old martial artist with zero acting experience did. This is the story of Taimak, the star of The Last Dragon, the man Hollywood never quite knew what to do with, and why, 40 years later, people are finally starting to appreciate him again. Now, before Hollywood ever came calling, Taimak's life already sounded like something out of a movie. He was born in Los Angeles in 1964. His father was an Italian singer. His mother was from Harlem and had worked around the famous Apollo Theater. But life wasn't always easy. The family dealt with constant harassment because of their interracial marriage. Eventually, they packed up and moved to London, and this is where the story starts getting a little wild. His mother opened what many believe was London's first soul food restaurant, and suddenly celebrities started showing up. David Bowie, Mick Jagger, Liza Minnelli. Not bad for a kid whose family had just moved halfway across the world. But while famous people were eating dinner at the restaurant, Taimak's home life was becoming more complicated. His parents eventually separated. His mother moved to Paris with his sisters. Taimak and his brother went to Rome with their father. Imagine that for a second. Most kids spend their childhood in one city. Taimak bounced between Los Angeles, London, Paris, Rome, and eventually New York. At this point, his life sounds less like a biography and more like somebody accidentally combined 3 different movies into one. And then something happened that seemed impossible. At just 11 years old, Taimak met legendary filmmaker Federico Fellini. Not only did he meet him, Fellini personally showed him around the famous Cinecittà studios. For a young kid, it must have felt like stepping into another world. Of course, Taimak had no idea that one day he'd be standing on movie sets of his own, because at that point, acting wasn't the dream. Martial arts was, and once he discovered it, there was no turning back. Inspired by Bruce Lee, Taimak started training when he was just 6 years old. Most kids his age were worried about cartoons and baseball cards. Taimak was obsessed with martial arts, and he didn't just dabble in it, he went all in. By the time he moved to New York, his training had reached another level entirely. He studied under some of the best instructors in the country, hour after hour, day after day, year after year. The results were incredible. Eventually, he earned black belts in 7 different martial arts styles. That's not a typo. At that point, if somebody challenged him to a fight, the smartest move was probably just apologizing immediately. By age 18, he had already won the New York State Kickboxing Championship. His future seemed obvious. Open a martial arts school, teach, compete, maybe become a coach. Hollywood wasn't even on the radar. But then one conversation changed everything. His mentor, legendary martial artist Ron Van Cleef, told him about an audition for a new martial arts movie called The Last Dragon. Taimak figured he'd give it a shot. After all, what was the worst that could happen? Well, as it turns out, quite a lot. Because when he arrived for the audition, he made one very important mistake. He showed up wearing a karate gi. Why? Because he thought they wanted to see him fight. Instead, they handed him a script and asked him to read lines. And according to Taimak, it was a disaster. The reading was awkward, the acting was stiff, and whatever confidence he had walking into that room disappeared pretty quickly. Most people would have been done right there. Thanks for coming. Better luck next time. But somebody saw something in him. Maybe it was his presence, maybe it was his martial arts background, maybe it was just one of those moments where somebody recognizes potential before anyone else can see it. Whatever the reason, they gave him another chance. They told him to come back in a month. So Taimak went home and got to work. And here's one of my favorite parts of this story. The person who helped him prepare wasn't some famous acting coach. It was his father, the same guy who had spent years performing as a singer. His father helped him work on stage presence, confidence, performance, everything he would need to survive another audition. A month later, Taimak walked back into that room. This time, he was ready, and somehow, the kid with no acting experience pulled off the impossible. He got the role, And when you look at who he beat, it becomes even more impressive. Denzel Washington auditioned, Wesley Snipes auditioned, Laurence Fishburne auditioned, Mario Van Peebles auditioned, Billy Blanks auditioned. Yet the role went to a 19-year-old martial artist who had never acted professionally before. Think about that for a second. Imagine telling those guys back then that the least experienced person in the room was about to land the job. That's exactly what happened. Suddenly, Taimak found himself starring in a major Hollywood production called The Last Dragon. And if you're old enough to remember the mid-1980s, you know this wasn't your typical martial arts movie. It was kung fu, comedy, music, action, and pure 1980s energy all rolled into one. Honestly, if somebody pitched this movie today, half the studio executives would probably think it sounded completely ridiculous, but somehow it worked. Director Michael Schultz leaned into the craziness. Instead of trying to make a serious martial arts film, he created something that felt like a live-action comic book. Everything was bigger. The characters, the villains, the music, the fights, even New York City itself felt larger than life. For Taimak, it was a dream come true. One of the strangest details is that some of the movie was filmed around places he already knew. As a teenager, he had spent countless hours watching kung fu movies in New York theaters. Now he was making one. That's gotta feel surreal. One day you're sitting in the audience watching your heroes. The next day you're standing in front of a camera hoping you don't forget your lines. The production moved fast. The entire movie was filmed in just over a month. But when it finally hit theaters in March of 1985, audiences responded immediately. The Last Dragon opened strong. Word of mouth spread. And before long, Bruce Leroy became one of the most recognizable martial arts characters of the decade. People loved the movie's message. People loved the fights. And people definitely love the glow. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen it, let's just say it became one of the coolest martial arts moments of the entire 1980s. The soundtrack became a huge success. Songs from the film climbed the charts. The villains became iconic. And Taimak suddenly looked like Hollywood's next big action star. At just 20 years old, everything seemed to be going exactly according to plan. But what happened next changed the course of his career forever, because just when it looked like he was about to break through, the door slammed shut, and for decades, it never fully reopened. For a moment, it looked like Taimak had it all. His first movie was a success. Fans loved him, critics praised him, and Hollywood seemed ready to build around him. The natural next step was obvious. More movies, more starring roles, maybe even a Last Dragon sequel. But Hollywood isn't always logical. And sometimes the biggest fights happen far away from the camera. After the success of The Last Dragon, Berry Gordy offered Taimak a multi-picture deal. On paper, it sounded like exactly what every young actor dreams about: security, opportunity, a future. But according to Taimak, things quickly became complicated. Negotiations started, disagreements followed, and before long, the relationship between the two sides began to fall apart. Years later, different people would tell different versions of the story. Some claimed Taimak wanted too much. Taimak said the situation was much more complicated than that. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is clear: the partnership collapsed. And in Hollywood, timing is everything. You don't get many chances to be the hot new star. When momentum disappears, it can disappear fast. One minute everyone wants to work with you, the next minute the phone gets a lot quieter. That's exactly what happened. A sequel called The Glow was discussed. Scripts were written, plans were made, but nothing happened. The project stalled. Then it disappeared altogether, and with it went what may have been Taimak's best opportunity to capitalize on the success of The Last Dragon. But that wasn't the only opportunity he lost. Soon, another major offer came along. This time, it was the American Ninja franchise. For younger viewers, it might be hard to understand just how popular those movies were during the 1980s. This was a real chance to jump into another successful action series. The money was good. The exposure would have been huge, and for many actors, the decision would have taken about 5 seconds. Taimak said no. The films were being made in South Africa during the apartheid era. A lot of entertainers accepted work there. Taimak wasn't comfortable doing it, so he walked away. Whether you agree with the decision or not, it cost him another major opportunity. And here's where the story becomes a little heartbreaking. Neither decision was necessarily wrong, but together they changed the trajectory of his career. One door closed, then another, and eventually Hollywood moved on. That's the thing about the entertainment industry. It rarely waits for anybody. There are always new faces, new stars, new trends. And before long, the guy who looked like the future of martial arts movies was watching from the sidelines. For many people, that would have been the end of the story. But Taimak wasn't built that way, because while Hollywood was forgetting about him, he refused to give up on himself. Most people would have become bitter. Think about it. Your first movie becomes a cult classic. You look like the next big action star. Then one opportunity disappears, then another, then another. A lot of people would have spent the rest of their lives talking about what should have happened. Taimak took a different approach. He kept moving, he kept learning, and he kept reinventing himself. Instead of sitting around waiting for Hollywood to call, he doubled down on the things he could control. He studied acting more seriously, he continued teaching martial arts, he opened a gym in Manhattan, he worked with students from all walks of life, some of them even came from famous families, and while movie roles weren't exactly pouring in, Taimak stayed busy. In the 1990s, he became involved with the early UFC. Back then, the UFC looked nothing like it does today. There were no giant arenas packed with thousands of fans, no billion-dollar television deals, no social media superstars. It was still the Wild West. Anything could happen. Taimak officiated preliminary bouts during some of those early events, helping the sport during its formative years. He also found opportunities outside of combat sports. In 2001, he worked as a martial arts coordinator for Madonna's Drowned World Tour. Think about that for a second. Most people know Madonna. Most people know UFC. Very few people have both of those on the same resume. That pretty much sums up Taimak's life. Every time one path closed, another unexpected one opened. He also worked on music videos, stage productions, and youth programs. One of the projects closest to his heart focused on helping at-risk young people. Because for Taimak, martial arts had always been about more than fighting. It was about discipline, confidence, self-control, purpose, the same lessons that helped him navigate an unpredictable life. In 2010, he was inducted into the Martial Arts Hall of Fame. It was a well-deserved honor, but even then, there was still a lingering question. Why wasn't Hollywood calling? Why wasn't the star of The Last Dragon getting the kind of opportunities many fans felt he deserved? Taimak eventually gave his own answer. According to him, Hollywood simply didn't know what to do with someone like him. And honestly, there may be some truth to that. He wasn't easy to fit into a box. He wasn't a traditional action star. He wasn't a traditional dramatic actor. He was a martial artist. A performer, a teacher, a fighter, a man who had spent his life crossing cultures and breaking expectations. Hollywood likes categories. Taimak never really fit into one. But while Hollywood seemed content to move on, something interesting was happening. The fans never did. Year after year, The Last Dragon refused to disappear. People kept watching it, quoting it, introducing it to their kids, sharing it with friends, and slowly, something remarkable started to happen. The movie that Hollywood treated like a cult classic was becoming something much bigger, a genuine piece of pop culture history. What makes Taimak's story so unusual is that even though Hollywood moved on, The Last Dragon never did. In fact, the movie's influence only seemed to grow with time. Hip-hop embraced it. Rappers referenced it in songs. Artists paid tribute to its characters. The film's style, music, and energy became part of the culture. Television shows referenced it. Athletes referenced it. Entire generations discovered it long after its original release, and that's when something strange happened. The movie became bigger than its box office numbers, bigger than the critics, bigger than the studio that released it. The people kept it alive, not Hollywood, the fans. Over the years, there were countless attempts to bring The Last Dragon back. Some came surprisingly close. In 2008, plans surfaced for a remake. At one point, Samuel L. Jackson was reportedly attached to the project. RZA was involved in discussions. Different actors were mentioned for various roles, but nothing ever materialized. Years later, another sequel idea emerged. This version would have taken the story in an entirely new direction. Again, fans got excited. Again, it never happened. It almost became a running joke. Every time The Last Dragon looked ready for a comeback, something stopped it. Projects stalled, plans changed, momentum disappeared, the story seemed cursed. Then something happened that few people saw coming. The rights to the property eventually returned to the original writer. Suddenly, new possibilities opened up. Fresh ideas were discussed, new projects were explored, and for the first time in years, there was real hope that Taimak might finally get the continuation fans had been waiting decades to see. But after 40 years of false starts, Taimak remained cautious. And honestly, who could blame him? At that point, he'd heard plenty of promises, he'd seen plenty of plans. He wasn't interested in possibilities anymore. He wanted results. Then the 2020s arrived, and for the first time in a very long time, things started moving in the right direction. The Last Dragon celebrated its 40th anniversary. The film returned to theaters. Special events were held around the country. New fans discovered it, old fans rediscovered it, and suddenly people were talking about Taimak again. Not as a forgotten actor, not as a cult figure, but as an important part of martial arts movie history. Then came another major announcement. Taimak was cast in a new martial arts project alongside Michael Jai White. Even more importantly, he received his first executive producer credit. For a man who had spent decades watching opportunities disappear, it felt like a long overdue victory. And maybe that's the biggest lesson from Taimak's story. Success doesn't always look the way we expect. When The Last Dragon became a hit in 1985, most people assumed Taimak was headed towards superstardom. That didn't happen. Instead, his path became far more complicated. There were setbacks, missed opportunities, disappointments, and long stretches where it felt like Hollywood had forgotten him entirely. But here's the thing, the fans never forgot. The movie never disappeared, and neither did Taimak. 40 years later, people are still talking about Bruce Leroy. They're still quoting the movie. They're still chasing the glow. Not because a studio told them to, because the story meant something to them. And maybe that's a legacy that's even more impressive than becoming a blockbuster movie star. Taimak beat incredible odds just to get his first role. He survived a career filled with twists and setbacks. And at 61 years old, his story still isn't finished. For decades, Hollywood struggled to figure out where Taimak belonged. But maybe the fans figured it out a long time ago. The glow never left. It just took the rest of the world 40 years to notice.